Hi, I'm Hazel. Welcome back to my channel. This is Reflect. This is where we talk about art and philosophy and emotions and life and learning and things. And today is really exciting. Basically, today I want to talk about how we're also uncomfortable whenever there is uncertainty or meaninglessness, but life doesn't always work that way. The biggest challenges that we will ever be thrown by life will come without an explanation. So I want to talk about these three core things that laptop here. If we can sort of master, we can really get rid of that sort of anxiousness and worry about the future and regret about the past. So these three core areas are the past, present, the future. For the past, it's meaninglessness, right? Not knowing why something happened and spending a lot of emotion and energy and time regretting those events. And for the present, it's not knowing what we're doing, where we're going. And for the future, it's obviously this uncertainty. Like, I don't know how I'm gonna make it, I don't know what my life is gonna be, etc. etc. So for each point here, I have a lot of tools and techniques and strategies and things. So let's get into it. So the first is meaninglessness, right? The past. So for me, what happens is that I need to personally know why certain things have happened so that I can make the best of that situation, and I can convince myself that, oh, this thing taught me something that is going to ultimately lead to growth, even if I don't understand it right now, which is okay, it's a positive mindset. But if you become too concerned with always this active movement, so I like being active and I like having a plan and I like knowing what my next steps are, so I like always figuring out that thing that happened in the past so that I can derive some meaning or some lesson from it and then implement that into my present so that the future is much better. But what happens is that sometimes things happen that are we don't need to understand them right now, or we will not be able to understand them no matter how hard we try, and what we're supposed to do is just let go and just believe and have faith that this thing will work out. And I also think the other reason things we can tend to move too fast, and we can tend to always be in movement, but always being in motion is also a sort of avoidance, in the sense that sometimes you just don't want to face that certain things have happened because of all of the kind of wasted time and money and resources and energy that has gone into that thing, right? So you regret your past version, or you are filled with guilt and regret, or you discount your past experiences. But one thing is that you are where you are now only because you went through all of those past versions of yourself, and all of that has only led to who you are right now and contributes to the whole you. And the other thing I would say is that if you're someone who dwells too much on the past, there is this line that I mentioned in the last video from this book called Held by Anne Michaels, which is that, and I'll read out that line to you right here. It says, the past exists as a present moment. So to think of it this way, it just means that the past exists only as long as you're thinking about it, and then the second you don't, it ceases to exist. It doesn't actually occupy space or time in the real world. It's only in your memory, it's only in your head. And so thinking of it that way gave me a lot of freedom, in the sense of it's only literally all of that worth of all of those years of whatever you have faced, shame or hurt or pain or trauma. It only exists in that one point, in the present, when you're thinking of it. Whereas your future is so exciting because it's filled with all of this space and all of these possibilities that your life can branch out into if you make decisions with that kind of mindset, and if you move and act with that kind of mindset in the present. But I would say that the other side of this coin is that if you're constantly feeling okay, I need more and I don't know what I'm doing and this thing I'm doing doesn't have meaning, then that could mean that you're kind of out of tune with yourself, that something you're doing doesn't connect with who you are on the inside. So this could look like the job that you're doing doesn't match up to what you really want to do, or the relationship you're in is that is not your person, or whatever area of life that's in. It could just be that you're doing something, or you're spending a lot of emotional or physical energy and time and resources in something that does not actually seem true to who you really are. But now getting back to that thing of being in constant movement is a form of avoidance. What I mean by that is just you're doing all of the right things and you're going to work and you're following your passions and you're working on your health and everything's good. But if you still feel this sort of disconnect, if you still feel something's off despite on the surface everything is fine, then that could mean that we're not really dealing with something that is bothering us on an emotional level. And so what you can do here is, so I asked myself, because this is something that happens to me, so I was what's the worst thing that would happen if I did not assign meaning to this life event, right? Or this traumatic event. Why did this happen? Or what's the worst thing that would happen if I did not know the answer to this problem right now. And I realized that, like, I sat and I thought about it, and I realized that the answer was that I would have to sit in discomfort. I would have to sit in discomfort. And what that means is I would have to just sit with that feeling. There would be no plan of action. There would be no, schedules to make. There would be no, these are the steps I need to follow. Like, it would just look like sitting in that feeling. And my issue with this, and especially for folks who have, emotional issues or emotional disorders or like BPD and all of that stuff, is that it can often look like feeling everything too deeply and too intensely, or the other end of that spectrum, which is, you're constantly in motion and everything. But there needs to be a sort of a middle ground where you're processing your emotions, and it's not always about like next steps. So a couple of tools I have for this, which I need to myself start applying, are, so I call this sitting with the feelings versus living the emotions. And what that essentially means is that anytime you are triggered, or anytime there is a trigger in the sense of something or someone has made you feel a certain type of way, just instead of, sitting and going deep into those feelings of like, this person always says this, or like, this person is always like this, or like, why do I have to deal with this? And that's not really improving your peace of mind. Just going down in a spiral of ugly, sort of negative thoughts, it doesn't really help, and it worsens the kind of the energy. And so my tool for this is basically sitting with the feelings. Means you do this thing called train imagining. This is a tool that I have stolen from my doc, and it basically means whenever all of those thoughts are racing through your head, because you can't actually control them, right? So you kind of imagine yourself on this train platform, and you're watching the trains like go by, right? So each train has, like, you can imagine literally the words on each compartment as the train goes by, and those are your thoughts. Those words on those trains are your thoughts. So those trains are your thoughts, and so they're coming and they're going, right? And so that you're watching them, visualizing, you're watching them go away, and eventually there will be peace because those thoughts will have gone. So what happens is that when you do this tool, right, it's like you are kind of split into two. One version of you is the one who's feeling those emotions, and the other one is the one who's standing on that train platform and being like, okay, I am not my thoughts, and I'm distancing myself from those thoughts, and I'm acknowledging them, and I'm accepting them, and I'm letting them go by, I'm watching them go by. But also, I do not believe them right now because I'm in this mood that I know that I can't fully trust right now. And in the sense that even if everything that I'm saying and thinking is valid, this does not have to upset me. I do not have to invest my full time and energy, and this does not have to affect my mood. And so I'm watching these thoughts, and they are valid, and I'm watching them go away. And that really does help improve the mood a lot. And then later, when you are in the position to sort of sit down and work out this problem that put you in that mood in the first place, you can do this thing, which is a tool I'm stealing from Mr. Clark's classroom. He's another YouTuber, and so it's called active imagination. I'll link the video so you can watch it because the whole video is great. And basically his tool for these sort of thoughts is that you go within yourself, right? So if you're, let's say you're like beating yourself up about something, there's a lot of negative self-talk going on, and so you kind of go within and you kind of question yourself, like, okay, why do I think this way? And so you don't just do the whys, you get to the root of the problem, but then you also ask the how, why, what, when, which means how can I solve this problem? What are the steps I can take to get support for this? When will I work towards solving this problem? So then you're actually developing a concrete solution versus just having those thoughts come at you, because if you just shove them away, they're not going to go away. They're going to keep bothering you till you get to the root of that problem and you figure out like a proper solution for it. So that was the first part. The second part is the present, right? Not knowing just means that you in the present are doing these things that you don't know how they're going to pan out, right? So like, you're doing your job, you're working on your health, but eventually you don't know when you're going to make enough money, or you don't know when you're going to get that big job, dream job that you really want. You just started on your business, but you don't know when it's going to make gains. And so for that, there are a few things you could do. There are like these three types of worries, right? So one is that you are in this worry of like, you're not able to sit still and be in the present. So you search for some answer, you search for some way out. And so my sister actually calls this an exit, right? So this is basically just the temptation to go towards an answer, like the inability to sit in discomfort and not having the answer. That's the first That's the first thing, and that's when we go towards an exit, right? So that could look like higher education when we don't know what we want to do, so we just like invest all our time, money, energy, resources into this MBA or whatever, master's, which doesn't really feel like it's us or what we want to do, but we do it anyway. Or we take a job that we didn't really want, but we do it anyway. So the solution here would be to, I think, experiment as much as possible, because even the next problem, which is that you are afraid of like not having the solutions right now, that also has the same answer, which is just trust that things do resolve themselves when you, number one, experiment, and the second thing is that you have patience. So what that means is that people don't often have the intent or the will to experiment, truly experiment, in the sense of like try out a bunch of different things, right? This could look like experimenting with job timings. Maybe you could work part-time, and so that way you still have like the rest of the day to work on your passion projects. Or maybe you could wait a while, move in with your parents, and save up on money that way and put that into your art. Or maybe you've been in corporate for a while, but you're like afraid of like moving towards what you really want, which is the arts. So you slowly shift yourself into that world by taking up courses on the weekends and watching tutorials and making short films and things like that. And so the point is that unless you experiment, you will always be exactly where you are right now. And the other thing is that you could try out like 10 different experiments like this and they would not work, and then you give up, but maybe you just needed one more, right? Maybe you just had to be patient enough for like one more experiment and it would have worked. So for instance, Reflect, earlier it was a website and it was then a newsletter, then I was on Blue Sky for a while, this channel, and then there was a phase when I made visuals and sketches because I wanted it to be Instagram posts, because something just did not feel right to me. It didn't feel like I could be consistent with putting out my thoughts every week or a couple of times a week, because I didn't have the format right and it didn't feel right. And then the niche and the audience and all of that stuff, I experimented with a bunch of things, and then I finally landed on YouTube and long form visual content, which is something that I would never have imagined Reflect was, but right now it feels like this is what it is at its core. And I have no niche, so I talk about art and philosophy and emotions and sometimes BBD, sometimes books. It's all over the place because that's what it feels like right now. And so I think the more experiments you make, the closer you get to the thing that you really want to do, what your calling is. The last part of this is that you are afraid of a tension between what you're doing and what you know you need to do. So I think that the quickest way to get what you want is also very hard, and that is dodging resistance. So I came across this term dodging resistance in this book, which I'll also link below because it's great. It's called wow, what is it called? It's here somewhere. How to Take Smart Notes. It's there. But it's basically dodging resistance is when you acknowledge that little voice inside yourself which says that, okay, I'm not actually doing the right thing right now and it's not aligned with what I need to do. And so this could look like, it's even true for emotional problems. This could look like owning up to your past mistakes. This could look like facing certain home truths and journaling about those. This could look like accepting past failures and letting go and stop. And you stop to like finally, you stop to blame yourself for certain things. So I think, like I said, the quickest way towards getting what you want is all this stuff that is underneath. It's all this stuff that is like layers below the actual surface level physical effort, which is all of the emotional stuff. And to let go of that and accept those home truths that are like nagging you all the time, that small inner voice inside of you, acknowledging that and letting go of certain things and accepting certain others, having conversations with the people involved in those situations, I think that is great. Now the last thing is uncertainty, right? So I think that this is pretty much built on the first two things, the past and the present. So I think that the better we get at the meaninglessness of the past and the sort of managing and accepting the meaninglessness of the past and the not knowing of the present, I think the lesser uncertainty of the future will impact us. Like, I think it'll bother us less and hurt us and worry us less. So I think the more you accept that different things just move at different paces, and that the fact that that's going to keep happening. There was this visual art situation, exhibition, art installment. There was something. It was like there are these, there's like the series of steps, and there's like a trampoline thing right next to the steps. And so the person walks up, and he's walking in a way where he'll fall off the side of the steps, and then he hits the trampoline and he bounces back. And so sometimes he bounces back on a step lower than where he was, and sometimes it's on a step higher than where he was. I'll link it because I'm sure it doesn't make sense right now. But I think life is pretty much like that, in the sense that you just have to accept that. Like, I have a problem with the word consistency, because I think the only people who can be consistent in things like mental health and physical health and all of that are, first of all, neurotypical, but also people who have a lot of access to money, and so they can afford things like docs and nutritionists and trainers and things like that, and in terms of health. And once all of that is sorted, they can work on the other things. I don't know, this is just my thought that, like, consistency is a very unrealistic word, or maybe its meaning needs to change, or we need to come up with a new word, because I feel like if you are someone who works out 4 times a week, and then the next week it's like you had a bad week, so you did it twice a week, and then the next week it was four times a week, and then for a month you were just not exercising at all, and then the third month you did again the first week twice, and the next week thrice, and the next week 4, and you build yourself up. I think that's totally fine too, because there is just something about, like, the ups and downs of life, and in a way that, like, unless you are really rich and you have no problems, you're just not gonna be able to be consistent at things like mental health and physical health and your sort of passion and your career and everything. But yeah, as long as you acknowledge, which takes a very long time to actually acknowledge, that these areas of your life, the mental health, the physical health, the passion and the career, will never move in equal progressions. As long as, like, you accept that and you make slow, unsteady progress at that, I feel like you're good. Because, like I said, the progress will be slow and it will be kind of unsteady, and then you will gain momentum, and then it'll be steady, and then you will fall off again, and then you'll come back again. So if that's what consistency means, then it's fine. If it means something else, I don't know, and I don't care. My final tips are things like health, sleep, nutrition, water, exercise, mental health. These things really do matter. I think they've been grilled into us so much that we just keep forgetting that they matter, but they're so important. Second thing is projects. This means the same experimentation thing that I've been talking about, right? Do things in projects. So, like, if you want to start a social media channel, don't, like, force yourself to post 6 days a week. Start with, like, once a week. And that's just an example. Third thing is journaling. Whatever form, shape you like, just journal, and don't make it a regular thing, in the sense of, if you like doing it regularly and you can, then go ahead, but don't be unrealistic with it. Like, just do it often. That's your only goal. Like, journal a couple of times a week, or once a week, or just often. The fourth tip I have for you is get another perspective. That means talk to people. This is like the social thing where you talk to people, and something so basic that you are worrying about, but the solution is so basic, you would just not be paying attention to your breath, is really nice, and body scans are effective, mindfulness is effective, of course, but this also means, like, rest, naps, no audio walks. So going on walks without any music or playlist or anything, podcasts or anything, is great. Just go and let your mind wander as your body is in motion as well. That's great. Activities. This means, I'm not talking about exercise, but I'm talking about activities that just, any kind of kinetic or sensory activity is great. So anything where you are moving, like basketball or cricket or whatever, but also sensory activities in the sense of, like, it could be pottery or painting or solving a puzzle. Pottery, I think, would be great for me, but where you are able to feel something and make something, like, with your bare hands, I think that's great. Just doing all of these things often. Finally, I think therapy. By this, I don't mean counseling, unless that's what's needed for you, but I think that, especially for neurodivergent people, I think DBT is great, CBT is great, and I think that DBT can really help for things like BPD and stuff, or people with heavy emotional issues. And I believe that is it. That's all I had for you today, and I hope you have a really lovely weekend's over. I hope you have a really lovely rest of the weekend, and night and day and dawn and dusk and all of that. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Take care.